Hi everyone, Lisa here, dietitian from Bariatric Surgery Nutrition, your source for credible nutrition, bariatric information. So we're here today to talk about the biggest weight loss surgery myth from a dietitian's perspective. So I was recently asked at a support group, what is the biggest myth or the most common myth about bariatric surgery or weight loss surgery? Which was a really great, fantastic question. So if you viewer, if you're watching, awesome question. It took me time to think about it because there's probably a few things that I would probably say that are either misunderstood, misinterpreted after surgery. But the most common myth about weight loss surgery, which I'm going to talk about, is stretching the pouch. That a lot of people are concerned before surgery and even right after surgery that they are going to stretch the pouch. It's like, oh, I don't want to do anything to damage it. I don't want to stretch my pouch. I don't want to do anything to harm my pouch. And it's always struck me as really interesting that's a common fear or common concern that a lot of people have about stretching the pouch. And when you really break it down and think about it, the concern about stretching the pouch is about weight regain. People are concerned that by stretching the pouch, which makes sense, that if the pouch, the surgery is making your stomach so much smaller, and if you're going to stretch it out, then your weight loss will not be as great and puts you at a higher risk of regaining weight. So that is true. If the stomach were to stretch, that is essentially what would happen, because you'd feel hungrier. You'd feel like you have more capacity to fill up your stomach. But the reason that this is a myth is because that's not the majority of the weight regain that I tend to see in clinic. The majority of the weight regain that I tend to see in clinic has nothing to do with the size of the pouch the majority of the time. Most of the time, it really has to do with the fact that the person is adopting certain habits that are affecting the stomach pouch. And what I mean by that is the following, and I'm going to shoot random numbers out just to give you a good perspective, but these are not evidence-based numbers. These are not numbers found in research. I don't even think that there is research that's really looking at what, the causes of weight regain, if it's related to the stomach stretching versus the actual habits. But from my experience, at the center that I work at, they do a lot of upper GIs, otherwise known as barium meals, which is a contrast, a solution that you drink. And then they take x-rays to take a look and see, when the solution goes into the stomach, down the esophagus, into the stomach, it highlights the capacity of the stomach, and kind of the surgeon or the doctor or the radiologist will have a sense of, does the stomach look larger than it should? That is the way that you can find out if the stomach looks larger than it should. But a lot of the times when we actually do these studies, we find that the stomach is actually fine, that's not the reason for the weight gain. The integrity of the stomach and the size of the stomach doesn't explain the extent of weight regain. So for me, the biggest myth that people have, or the biggest myth or misunderstanding that people have about surgery, is that the only way that I can regain weight is by stretching my stomach, which isn't at all the case. And if I were to give these numbers to you, a rough approximation, out of every person that comes in with weight regain, approximately 80 to 90% has nothing to do with the pouch whatsoever. 80 to 90% of the time, the pouch is actually fairly normal looking in the upper GI. And the rest of the time, yes, the stomach does look larger and they do need a revisional surgery. But again, 80 to 90%, which is a pretty big number and really is what I tend to see in clinic, it really has nothing to do with stretching the stomach whatsoever. And that's what I want to communicate to everyone, just to have a better understanding, the fact that stretching the pouch is not the only cause of weight regain. It is a cause, but it's not the majority of the cause of weight regain. A lot of the weight regain that we tend to see has to do with habit in the long term. And we'll make another video going through like all the factors that are associated with weight regain. That we'll do in the future. But what I wanted to kind of specify in this video right now is that it's normal to feel like you have more capacity over time. The way that you feel a week after surgery is definitely not the way you feel at 1 month, and is definitely not the way that you feel at 1 year after surgery. You do have a little bit more of capacity and a little bit more ability to eat. Although the stomach can stretch, and it probably does stretch a little bit, compared to where you were right after surgery as compared to where you would be at 1 year, yes, the size is larger. And the reason you feel that you have more ability to eat is, one, because of the inflammation, the swelling that you have right after surgery. That's the biggest cause. Right after surgery, after taking a few spoons of a soup, you just feel overly full, but that's definitely not the way you'd feel at 1 month or even 6 months down the line or even a year. So that's normal. But I would say that the integrity of your stomach at 1 year, wherever you're at that point, the amount of food that you're eating to feel satisfied, we shouldn't be pushing that to feel like a holiday dinner meal. We should really be backing that up a little bit more and making sure that you're comfortable, that you're satisfied at your meal, but we're not filling up the stomach to its capacity. Because in the future, those few extra bites at every meal and every snack accumulated throughout the day and throughout the weeks can result in anywhere between a 7 to 10 pound weight gain at the end of that year, even though I still have a tiny pouch. So again, you really want to get to a certain mark or a certain measure at your meal. So you don't want to feel like a 10 on 10 at your, like a holiday dinner. Bring that down to an 8 on 10 or a 7 on 10. You don't want to be overly full. But again, that could be a reason for weight gain, but it's not because your pouch is stretched. It's a normal capacity that we would face a year down the line, but it's not necessarily the cause. So in terms of, I hear a lot of people talking about going back to basics when there is weight regain, and I do agree with that. I think it's misinterpreted as going back to basics as go back to liquids, and that's not necessarily the case. Going back to basics just mean, is there anything in my diet that I can be improving or working on that would help me attain the goals that I'm trying to attain? So that's really what going back to basics should really mean. So in terms of going back to basics, what I want to show you here is that you could get your free bariatric balanced plate or weight loss surgery balanced plate if you head over to our website. The link is put up right beside this video. Print that out, put that beside you. It gives you a sense of what your plate should look like when it comes to a balanced plate. A lot of the times we see the proportions are very off, and that proportion being off on the plate every time you're eating can make a difference of weight gain at the end of the year. But again, not because the pouch is stretched, but because my proportions are not appropriate, or my proportions are not what they used to be. So that could be a cause of weight gain over time. However, saying that, should you see your surgeon or see your team? Absolutely. You should get a consultation with your dietitian. You should see your bariatric nurse or see your surgeon and ask these questions to find out, has my stomach stretched out to the point that it's affecting my weight gain? So you can ask for if an upper GI or a barium meal is appropriate for you. It's great to have that conversation with your team. But it's also important to understand the reasons as to maybe other alternative reasons as to why I may have gained weight. Am I able to physically fit more food in? Have I tested that out truly? Is it a question of fitting the food in or being hungry to eat all that food? If the stomach has truly stretched, you will feel starved and you feel hungry to eat that amount of food. But oftentimes, the capacity of the stomach is not super large, but we're overfilling it and feeling overly full, getting to that 9 or 10 on 10 at every single meal. So have that conversation with your team. It's always an option. It's a fairly non-invasive procedure that can be done, but your team is first going to assess if they believe that that really is an explanation for the weight gain. But otherwise, in terms of my stomach stretching being the cause of the weight gain and the fear that people have about their stomach stretching as being the cause of weight gain, that if the stomach were to stretch, it may just happen because it happens. We don't know all the reasons why the stomach may stretch. It's hypothesized, it's theorized, we're not sure, but it could be because of soda intake or any carbonated beverages. It could be because we're overfilling the stomach. Theoretically, technically the stomach is a muscle, so that could potentially stretch over time, but it's still, some of the scientific community doesn't fully agree with that because they know that they make their pouches fairly tight. But it could absolutely be a cause. So have that discussion, but in terms of fearing the stomach stretching, that shouldn't be a fear because 80 to 90%, again, by my numbers and my estimates and my experience, 80 to 90% really has to do with habit and not at all with the size of the stomach whatsoever. So I hope that was informative to at least kind of give you some peace of mind or ease out some of the misunderstandings related to weight loss surgery. And if you check right beside this video, I'm not even sure which side it's going to be on when you view this, but we have a few links for you. One of them is to download the Bariatric Balance Plate, print that out, post that somewhere just to remind you as a daily reminder about what the portions should be looking like on your plate. You can also join our free newsletter to remain up to date on all the content that we put out. We put out blogs, we put out these videos, we have workshops that we have that create, and also content. Some of them is free content, some of it is payable content, but take a look and check and see what works for you and what could be useful to you. We have our mindful eating workshop waitlist, so click on that, register your name, and no obligation to register when the workshop actually begins this coming summer. But put your name on the list just to get more information about it. Check out our latest blog that the fantastic Monica Bashaw has written about the 5 mindset shifts that you need to be truly happy after surgery, because we find that that's a super important component. And if you haven't heard about our book, then go out and take a look at it. We have the link to our website that talks about the book, shows you can see the table of contents and see if you find the book interesting, but it's called A Complete Guide to Weight Loss Surgery, Your Questions Finally Answered. So take a look at that. It's a great resource. We've been getting fantastic feedback on it. And if you've purchased it or if you plan to purchase it, send us your feedback. We'd love to hear your comments and your feedback about the book. So I hope everybody has a great night. If there's any other content or discussions or questions or myths that you want demystified, let us know, send us a message, and we'll definitely put that out for you. So hope to see you soon, and send us your ideas, send us your comments. Have a good night.